And welcome. It is Frankie Boyer. This is Frankie and the ex-con, and joining me, none other than GC Brown, the ex-con. We have so much to talk about. I am so excited we are finally doing this.
Yes.
There, there is so much information that we need to share, but I want to first begin the story of how I met GC Brown. I had the good fortune last year to interview GC for his then brand new book, Sniff. And I have interviewed tens of thousands of people in my career, tens of thousands of people. And every once in a while, I just have this vibration and feeling about somebody. And it was, they say kismet, meant to be magical. It happened with GC. And
Awesome.
I absolutely loved his story. And I also felt that we as a country have very little knowledge about what really goes on behind the doors of a prison. How is it possible that a young man, GC, winds up in prison for almost 17 years for a crime that he did not commit and not be bitter about it? His story is a remarkable story. He is an entrepreneur. It started when he was a little boy counting money at the farm in his grandmother's big jug where she kept the change. And I am so thrilled to present the first podcast of Frankie and the ex-con and GC Brown. We are in for a ride, and everyone better buckle up because this is going to be phenomenal radio. Things that one never hears about. Masturbation. We're going to be talking about sex in prison. We're going to be talking about currency. We're going to be talking about why there is absolutely no rehabilitation in prison. There is so much that we will get into. But first, I think it's important that everyone hear your story because it is truly an extraordinary story.
Yeah. Thank you. Super happy to be doing this with you, Frankie. What a way to meet. What this has turned out to be is amazing. So happy that we get to talk about all this stuff. And
Yes.
people do need to know. There's lots and lots of stuff that goes on in prison, outside of prison, on your way to prison, on your way out of prison, probation. There's just a lot of information that people would just never get otherwise, unless they had this podcast.
So when you were a young boy and you were on the farm, how did you see your life unfolding?
That's funny. So small town, farm, middle of Indiana. I knew at a very young age that that's not where I wanted to end up. Not that I minded the work. I loved being on the farm. I love where I'm from, but I had bigger dreams, bigger aspirations. So when everybody else was outside playing, my great grandmother actually, used to keep these big 5-gallon water jugs of
Yes.
change and dollar bills and nickels and quarters and lots of pennies. And I used to pour that thing out on the living room floor while she'd be sitting in a rocking chair, all the other kids in the back 40 playing. I'd sit there and count. I'd just make piles of change, piles of quarters, and piles of nickels, and mix them together and count them again all the time. Hundreds and hundreds of times I did this. And I used to run around nonstop saying that I was going to be a millionaire and retired by the time I was 30. No idea at 9 years old how that was going to happen. I just knew that I wasn't going to end up on the farm forever.
And
So
it did
here
happen.
we are.
It did happen.
It did. It did.
So
And by
let's
the
go
time I hit
back.
30,
Yes. Let's go back. You're this young entrepreneur living life. Tell everybody you were in real estate and then you wound up in the diamond business and wound up in South Africa. So go back to how that happened.
so I started off I built a real estate empire first. Well, let me back up further than that. So at 17, I had a bunch of different offers to go on to play baseball in college. My grandfather was a professional baseball player for the White Sox. My uncle played for numerous teams. At 17, I thought that's where I was destined to go. Signed with Butler University in Indianapolis. Moved back from Arizona to Indiana. That summer, just started making money. I started off selling Kirby vacuum cleaners just as a summertime gig. That turned into detail shops, which turned into sandwich sub shops, which
Needless
eventually
to say,
turned into
college
yeah,
never happened. Yeah.
college never happened. I started making money at 17 years old. I think the first summer I made like, I don't know, 80, 90 grand at 17 years old from the farm, where it's hand me downs and everything that goes along with the
Yeah.
farm life.
Yeah.
Crops come in, crops don't come in. There's lean seasons, there's heavy seasons. It's chores. It's a lot of different things. I knew that I didn't want those things. So I started making money at 17. I've owned everything you can think of, from, like I said, detail shops to sandwich shops to nightclubs to mobile homes to real estate. I turned the real estate in. That's where I excelled at. In my late 20s, my late part of my 20s, I got into a lot of real estate development. I knew a lot of people with money. I knew a lot of people that needed money for developments. So I got in all that. Real estate was great. I turned real estate into a couple of software companies out in Arizona. Turned that into a restaurant chain of sushi restaurants. Turned that into a flower shop in Quito, or not a flower shop, a flower company, online flower company out of Quito, Ecuador. Ended up in West Africa, not South Africa. South Africa would have been a nicer place to be, but I ended up in West Africa along the Ivory Coast in Sierra Leone. By way of, I spent 9 weeks in Cairo, Egypt first. Lost a bunch of money trying to get to the diamonds. Then relocated to Central Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo. Ended up there for 6
What a
weeks.
journey. What an
Yeah,
unbelievable journey you were on.
yeah, incredible. But the diamonds turned into the federal investigation. Government thought I was bringing in blood diamonds in the United States.
And you
I
were not.
wasn't.
Yeah.
Um,
So, when people hear the term, I'm innocent, I didn't
yeah,
do it. We hear that a lot, but you really didn't do this. You
that's
didn't do
correct.
the crime they accused you of.
Correct. So for the long time since I've been out of prison, and I've been saying this a lot, I was constantly saying that I didn't do what the government said I did, but I found myself constantly saying I was doing other things, maybe not illegal, but I was doing immoral things. And the only reason I started saying that was basically because people don't want to hear you're innocent. People want to hear that you did it, you changed your life, and you came back. So I came out of prison not bitter. I made some life changes, but I did. I had a habit of telling people that I was doing other things, which kind of gave off the wrong connotation. I wasn't doing things that I was doing whatever young guy does, living in Miami, making that kind of money. Were some of them wrong? Right? Yes, maybe, but nothing called for a 20-year sentence, Frankie. Nothing,
Exactly. Nothing.
nothing, nothing in my life called for a
So
20-year prison sentence.
so you had the lawyers, you had the resources, you had everything at your disposal. One would have thought, you're going to beat this. You would have won.
Yeah, so I did. I had probably the best lawyer that I could possibly get at the time, the best on the East Coast. He told me that if there was ever a case, well, back up. He first warned me of going to trial. The government has a 97% conviction rate. That doesn't mean they're right 97% of the time. We know our government, they're not right 50% of the time, but they're allowed to do and say and act, lie. They're allowed to do anything they want in that courtroom. They're not held to any kind of standard. So they have a 97% conviction rate. My attorney warned me about going to trial. But the same breath, he said, but if there was ever a case to take to trial, yours is the one. It's, in fact, he addressed my case as the emperor with no clothes on. The government fabricated, made up stuff. At the end of the day, they did offer a plea. I was not guilty. I was not willing to leave the life that I had built. At that time, I had was married, not married. I was had a fiance, had a 7 year old daughter, had a 3 year old or 2 year old daughter. I had built a life, the life I thought that I wanted. I refused the plea. I took them to trial. That
So the
3 year
plea was
plea,
the 3 years. The plea was for 3 years.
I would have done three. The plea was actually, don't quote me, but I think it was like 48 months, 40 to 60 months.
Okay.
With good time, I'd have done about 3 years in a
Did you
camp.
did
I
you
would have done it
even
in a federal
in a
prison camp.
camp, right?
Yeah.
Which is very different than where you were.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that you understood, because it sounds to me that you really didn't understand what the ramifications were.
Well, I understood going to trial, there was a risk of losing. What I did not understand is that for executing my constitutional right and making them prove the case, that I could actually get 240-month sentence. I didn't know that they could offer me a 3 year plea, me deny that plea, and then they turn around and give me statutory max. I didn't understand that. Not
Yeah,
that that would have changed my mind. I probably still would have fought them regardless. I fought them on
except that you
a,
were fighting a system that was already rigged.
a rigged system, Frankie. It's
Yeah, yeah. And that's what people
no one
don't
will ever understand
understand.
it unless they're in it.
No, no.
You just don't.
And what makes this even more devastating a story is that you were so young and had your life.
Yeah.
You know, it was like you created as an entrepreneur, as a hardworking, what what stick to itiveness you had.
Yeah, I tell you what, I look back at it now, and but I look back at my life period. I was in the diamond business in Western Africa, Sierra Leone, 2 years after the Civil War. I look back at that and how did I survive that? A quick story, I was in a hotel room. I woke up to a bunch of noise in the middle of the night, opened the hotel room door, and this is $470 a night hotel. Not because it's worth $470. The carpets are filthy and the dirt coming out of the faucets, and it's electricity 50% of the time. So the $470 a night doesn't mean
Wow.
anything. It just happened to be the largest conglomerate of UN workers in the area. So that hotel,
Was safe.
obviously, they jacked up the prices because of that. That being said, I opened the door in the middle of the night to a bunch of noise, and they had somebody had broken into or robbed a guy 2 doors down from me, slit him from ear to ear, robbed him for 115, 117,000 bucks, whatever it was at that time, I forget. $117,000. I'm literally a couple of rooms down with a $500,000 in a briefcase underneath the bed. So I look back, I literally walked around Sierra Leone and Kinshasa with a grocery bag and a pair of Jordan pants so that I could run if I needed to, a pair of tennis shoes, a t-shirt, a hat, a camera around my neck, and a sack over my shoulder with a $500,000 in it. And that's how I bought diamonds in the streets
Oh
in
my
these
God.
places. I later found out the big reason that I made it back then. Now, this is 2004, 2002 through 2005. The reason that I made it, I had the earpiece, the Bluetooth. And if you remember the old earpieces, they used to flicker the blue. So those hadn't made it yet to that part of the world. It was kind of a new thing. They thought, and I was a big guy, I've always been into fitness. They thought I was some kind of special forces with that thing in my ear. I later found out that's the
Oh,
reason nobody ever messed with me. But
that's
going
so
back to your
cool.
question,
Oh my
my whole
God.
life
Yeah.
has been like that. Like it's been like, how did you get through it? I just have gotten through it. I just have gotten through it.
So as you're running through the streets in Africa, when you came back to the States, is that when the IRS or the government problem began?
So 2 year, I didn't know this, but so when I found out about the case, I found out that the government had been following me and investigating me for 2 years. When I got my discovery, which is for the people that don't know, when you're convicted or you're charged with a crime in the federal system, I believe in state too, they have to provide evidence, and it's called discovery. So in my discovery, there's pictures of me all over the globe doing these diamonds because I'm buying them there. It's a 30-hour flight. Sometimes I'm stop over or lay over in Madrid. I may be in Paris. I may be in Brussels. It's a 30-hour flight getting in and out of these places in Africa. So it was different places all the time. And a lot of the times I'd bring the diamonds out of Africa and I'd take them to different places to sell them. So open my discovery, there's pictures of these agents literally standing right next to me in the same bars, in the same nightclubs, in the
And
same
you
hotels.
never noticed it.
Never ever knew. So they investigated me for a couple of years thinking that I was bringing in
So
conflict
we
or
spent
blood
money.
diamonds
The government spent money investigating you
for 2 years.
for, for 2 years.
Eh,
And that must have
eh,
been that if you were to think about what that cost,
Oh,
it must have been
listen,
a fortune.
Frank, I was a young guy, and not for nothing, I was bringing in 1,000, 1,500 carats, 1,800 carats at a time. You're talking about millions of dollars. So I was a young kid. I was in my 30s. I wasn't staying at the Motel 6. I was staying at the nice hotels. I was staying at the eating at the best restaurants and hanging out at the best nightclubs. And so I was spending money. So the money that I'm spending, these guys are right next to me. They're spending the same money. So they did this for 2 years without me knowing about this. So my thinking is, and I of course I don't have proof of this, but my thinking is they took this back to their supervisors at the end of 2 years and it says, "Here's all the receipts. Here's everything that's we followed around and done. There's nothing that he's done improper with the diamonds," and they charged me with some BS misdemeanor tax offenses. Frankie, tax failure to file taxes on time. It's a misdemeanor. But because I didn't bow to them and admit to it and just the craziness that they tried to put me through, they superseded the indictment. Then they moved it into tax evasion. They didn't even charge me with tax evasion at first. They later came back and superseded the indictment once that I wouldn't take the plea. I still didn't take the plea. I still said I'm going to trial. I didn't evade the taxes. So the statute says in order to willfully evade, you have to willfully evade your taxes. That was not the case. I had the same tax firm for 10 years prior, the whole thing. So I didn't bow to that. So then they took that money. They said that the $480,000 that they claimed that I still owed for 2005, they took that 480,000, considered that ill-gotten gains. So anything that they took, basically took $480,000 out of that year, several million dollars. They chose the 480,000 out of several million dollars that happened to be tied to my mortgages and my real estate. That's how they got the wire and the mail fraud. They took and separated the 480,000 they felt was theirs. So they picked a
So
few hundred
crazy.
or a few thousand from here, a few thousand from here, put it all together, and each one of those little packages of money that they or little parcels of money they said I owed, they attached those to pieces of real estate. Real estate. So the tax evasion, the most you can receive for tax evasion in the United States is 60 months, 5 years. The misdemeanors, what they originally charged me for, there were 5 misdemeanors, failure to file on time. They each carried up to a year, which is how they worked the original plea offer. So when they attached it to the mortgages and my bank stuff, wire and mail fraud, those carry a maximum term of 20 years. So they couldn't give me the 20 years unless they went in and
So
picked
insane.
the 480,000 out of several million dollars. It's all, they do what they want, Frankie. It's just, it's
No,
unbelievable. So
I
they gave me
I
53
think people
cases
need to
of
hear this.
discovery.
This
Say
is
it again.
why this is why we're doing this show. People
Yes.
need to hear. They need to hear what the truth is because
Yeah.
we as Americans are clueless. I know of a case right now where there are two police reports that claim someone did bodily harm to another. Never happened, but it's on the police report. this is the reality of our world today. And I don't know. I don't want to blame. This is not a podcast to blame and piss on people. That's not
Oh,
what
not at
this
all.
is about. This is about to educate people what the truth is. And how do we fight something that's so corrupt? How do we fight a prison system that is not doing any rehabilitation, that is not making people change? You're supposed to be reformed. You're supposed you know, when you said to them, what am I supposed to do while I'm here after you were convicted? You couldn't do anything. You couldn't live your life. You couldn't do your dealings. You were not allowed to
Nothing.
do that in prison.
Nothing. Zero. It's
Right.
so there's. It's the same gray walls. They say you have two responsibilities in prison, Frankie. You have to stand up in front of your bunk twice a day, Monday through Friday, at I forget the times now, which is crazy. Oh, I'm sorry, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You have to stand by your bunk. Everybody, count time 4 o'clock and 10 p.m. at night. Just for a head count. It's done nationwide. It's an account called in. It's an account called into the federal government to make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. On the weekend, there's an extra. There's a 10 a.m. stand-up count. There's a 4 p.m. stand-up count and a 10 p.m. stand-up count. Those are your only responsibilities in prison. You do not have to do anything else. They don't rehabilitate you. All the programs that America thinks that we're being given in there, or that I was given, not true. They've taken away the college courses. They used to give you college courses. They used to give you trades. They used to give you
Yes, I've
a
seen
lot
that.
more.
They don't do that anymore.
Yeah, none of it.
So
And the budget back then was a third of what it
of
is
what it
now.
is today.
They
So
give it a huge budget and they don't
so
do
we need
anything
to
for
ask
you.
where the money is. We need to ask
Yeah,
where that money is. That's
yeah.
number one. And we will explore some of these topics as well because there's so much that we need to get into
Uh,
with GC. Um, so you started writing. Let's go back to the trial for just a moment. How long was the trial?
trial was 19 days, including weekends, and there was a long. There was a federal holiday in there too, so really it was 9 days of trial, but it got stretched out over 19. But it was 9 full days of trial, which they don't even make that fair for you, Frankie. They wake you up, they keep you in a county facility, or they kept me in a county facility. I did not get bond, yet murders, drug dealers, all kinds of other people in the world get bonds. They didn't give me a bond. They said I was an economic risk, that a
Wow.
flight risk, which I
Wow.
wasn't. All my property, everything was in South Florida. But regardless of that, they wake you up at 4 o'clock in the morning. They put you in ankle cuffs, wrist cuffs, strap you around the waist, cart you over to town. They sit you on the other side of town. They sit you in another cement cell. They don't take the leg chains off of you, the ankle chains off of you. They leave you sit until 9, 10 o'clock in the morning on a cement bench. Then you go into trial at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. You stay there until trial, sitting in that chair in front of the jury till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They take you back whenever they get around to it. They take you back to the county again. You get back up to I got back up to my floor in my cell 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night to wake up the next day at 4 o'clock to do it all over again. They make it literally impossible
So
for you to
sad.
beat them. They
So
took my
sad.
case, Frankie, not one, not anything, not a single iota of a charge for diamonds. They gave 53 boxes of discovery, which was pictures of my family. It was bank statements. It was mortgage statements. It was cell
How
phone,
much
but just
money did that
53
trial
boxes of garbage,
how much
Frankie.
money did that trial cost you?
A couple $1,000,000. My direct appeal alone was $350,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The To get back, so they took this is how dirty they actually are. They took those 53 boxes of discovery. Now, mind you, wasn't charged anything with diamonds at all. They put 53 boxes behind them in front of the jury, and on the front of each one of those 53 times, my full name, the case number, and bloody diamonds underneath of it. just to be dirty. Was never charged with the diamonds, never found, not a, they charged me with misdemeanors. So if I'd actually done something illegal with the diamonds that are felonies, conflict diamonds, blood diamonds, those are felonies, terrorist, all kinds of different charges. They could not find anything that I had done improper on the diamonds, and yet still put up 53 pieces of paper on the front of
Stupid.
each one of those boxes that
Stupidness.
said bloody diamonds.
Stupidness. What
You
was
can't
it
beat them.
like? What was it like when the jury came back with the verdict for you?
I knew that the second that trial actually started, I knew I was beat. Their opening statement, and I knew I hadn't done this, but their opening statement, Frankie, was so amazing that I sat there questioning myself. I said, "Did I do that? Is that possible?" It was
Wow.
incredible. I knew almost. I knew immediately you can't beat these people. It was unbelievable. The show that they put on, they brought down a special prosecutor from New York. Now you're talking about $480,000. You're talking about nothing compared to what's in the federal system. They brought a special prosecutor down from New York. They brought a special IRS prosecutor down from New York. They paraded through this courtroom. It was impressive. I mean, they brought in a couple FBI agents, and they do not like to be, when you fight them, they go get all their buddies and they do whatever they can to make you look like a mobster. It's incredible. I've never had violence in my life. I've never been charged with a DUI. I've never sold drugs. None of the things that you would think that they would try to just kill somebody over. It was incredible. The show that they put on is just, the attorney told me one time after trial was over, it's really who gets up there and tells the best story. And how do you beat a story like that?
You just can't.
You
That's
can't.
why we're doing this podcast, because this is a way to show America that it's unfair, it's not right. We have so much to talk about. We will continue on our next episode. You don't want to miss one
No.
episode of Frankie and the Ex-Con. G.C. Brown, author of the award-winning book Sniff, we will share with you about his new venture, so exciting, Up Cup Coffee with a K. Very exciting since he's been out of prison, some stories, and we'll tell you all about that on our next episode. This is Frankie Boyer signing off with GC Brown. Thanks for listening. Make it a great day. And as always, smile.
See you soon.
Okay, so that was a very good first episode, I thought.
Yeah, I started